All right, let's talk about life in two of the world's biggest economies, Japan and the United States. We're going to go way beyond the usual stereotypes and really dig into what it's like to live day to day in both places. So let's kick things off with a big question, right? What makes a good life? Is it having the chance to achieve absolutely anything, limitless success, but also taking on all the risk that comes with it? Or is it living in a place where everyone is guaranteed a really high quality of life, where there's a safety net to catch you if you fall? And that's really the heart of what we're looking at today. Think of the US as the high ceiling, the sky's the limit, right? And Japan as the high floor, where the main goal is to make sure everyone has a stable, solid foundation under their feet. Okay, so how does this whole ceiling versus floor thing actually look in the real world? We're going to break it down across 5 key parts of life to see how it all shakes out. All right, let's jump right in with housing. I mean, this is probably the biggest piece of anyone's budget, right? And you're going to see the difference between the two countries is, well, it's huge. So first up, just look at the size difference. The average home in the US is more than twice as big as the average home in Japan. That's not a small difference. It completely changes how you live your life at home. It really points to that American ideal of a big house in the suburbs versus Japan's super efficient, dense city living. But of course, all that extra room costs money. A lot of money. For a comparable family apartment, you're looking at rent that's over 150% higher in the US. Think about that. That single bill completely reshapes a family's entire budget. And it's not just the rent. You've got to power and heat those bigger American homes, right? And that's way more expensive too. So when you add it all together, the basic cost of just having a place to live is in a totally different league in the US. All right, so let's shift gears from housing to what's in the kitchen. Food is obviously another huge expense. But what's really interesting here is that it's not just about the price tag. It tells you so much about the culture around eating. Yeah, this second you walk into a grocery store, you can feel it. Americans spend, on average, about 36% more just to stock their fridge. I mean, look at this. Bread, eggs, chicken, the basics. They're all just way cheaper in Japan.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Eating out. There's this Japanese concept called omotenashi. It's this whole philosophy of hospitality where providing amazing service is just expected. It's part of the deal, not something you add on as a tip.
And you can see the direct result of that philosophy right here. An average meal in Japan is almost half the price of one in the US. And get this, that's before you factor in the 15 to 20% tip that's standard in America. It completely changes the culture around eating out, making it way more accessible for everyone. Okay, moving on from just the day-to-day costs, let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture of lifestyle. Things like work, how you get around, and just the general culture of well-being.
This is where you see some really fundamental differences in how society is structured. Japan, for example, has a well-known reputation for poor work-life balance, though they're actually starting to legally require people to take vacation days. Compare that to the US, where there's no federal law at all for paid leave. And then there's just getting to work. Japan is built around this incredible public transit system. But in the US, for most people, life revolves around the car. And with the average new car costing nearly 50 grand, that's a huge expense.
And, that stability in Japan's system, historically, it's come at a really high price. There's even a word for it, karoshi, which literally means death from overwork. The fact that this term even exists tells you everything you need to know about how intense that work culture has been, even though things are slowly getting better. So that brings us to the broader social safety net. And this is really where that idea of a high floor becomes crystal clear, especially when you look at how each country takes care of its people, particularly as they get older. And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. Japan has the highest life expectancy in the world. On average, people there live a full 7 years longer than Americans. That is an incredible difference, and it points directly to things like diet, lifestyle, and, of course, their universal healthcare system. But it's not just about adding years to your life, it's about adding life to your years, right? And the data here is pretty clear. Older Americans have much higher rates of chronic conditions like arthritis and heart disease. They also report having more trouble with basic daily activities. So in Japan, people aren't just living longer, they're staying healthier and more active for a longer time. And what about financial security as you get older? Well, the difference here is just staggering. Look at this. 40% of older Americans have negative financial assets. That means they owe more money than they have. In Japan, that number is only 3%. It shows a profoundly different approach to making sure people are financially secure in their retirement years.
So, after looking at all this, what's the takeaway? Let's bring it back to that original idea of the high floor versus the high ceiling and really weigh the pros and cons.
This really sums it all up perfectly. Life in the US is kind of geared towards that high ceiling. It gives you incredible opportunities for wealth and freedom, but the trade-off is higher costs and a weaker safety net. On the other hand, life in Japan is all about that high floor, making sure everyone has a certain quality of life, a baseline of security and well-being. So in the end, there's no easy answer, is there? What does a better life actually mean to you? Is it the freedom to aim for the stars, even if it means you could fall hard? Or is it the comfort and security of knowing there's a solid floor beneath you and everyone else? It really all boils down to your own personal values. Which one feels more like home to you?